Zoom right now. To do that, we're joined now by Scott Kessler. He is Global Sector Lead for Technology, Media, and Telecommunications over at Third Bridge. Scott, you've had about 10 minutes to look through these numbers. What jumps out to you?
Well, a couple things. I mean, I think this is an example of maybe no news is good news. I think this is largely consistent with what people were hoping. Slightly better estimates for the future, slightly better in terms of what they produced for the recent quarter. Um, I think what people are interested in is kind of what you've been talking about, which is this notion of, the world transitioning from being at home to hybrid to maybe being more in the office. How is Zoom going to fare? Zoom, I think, relatively recently indicated that it was bringing people back to the office, and people joke that probably isn't a good thing for Zoom, the business. But I think Zoom has evolved in a way that people are using it in a variety of different contexts, and it does seem like the enterprise business is particularly intact.
Yeah, that call for people to return to the office felt very meta when it first came out. Scott, let me ask you about the different tools that Zoom is looking to launch to make sure that it holds on to these enterprise customers. John gave us a little bit of a rundown of them. How many of these, or how many of the initiatives that Zoom wants to undertake will involve building it out on its own in-house innovation versus acquiring it?
Well, look, I mean, Zoom, I think, somewhat famously tried to make a very large acquisition in the contact center space. And they ended up abandoning that transaction. I think in part because you had resistance, both from the acquiree, at least would be acquiree, as well as Zoom shareholders. And that was something that I think taught the company that they should kind of stick to their knitting. It's a company that's known, and we've heard this over and over again from experts, that Zoom is a company that has kind of like a technology and innovation DNA,
Hmm.
and they like to do that themselves. And so you should expect maybe smaller acquisitions, but really more of a build versus a buy strategy.
Right, right. And when it comes to AI, and of course, this is something that was mentioned in the press release, is AI a cost saving measure for Zoom or is it a revenue generator?
Yeah, I think the answer that most companies are going to give you regarding that question is both, right? I think initially it's more obvious to be a cost saving measure for sure. If you can employ AI and suddenly, there are fewer workers that are
Hmm.
necessary to kind of take on certain initiatives and efforts, then so be it. But I do think when you look at, say, Zoom IQ, that's actually pretty compelling, and they're weaving quite a bit of AI into that. They're an early investor in Anthropic, which is a competitor to OpenAI. So AI is definitely front and center for them, and I think they're employing it in a variety of different ways.